Galveston Unscripted. Miss Betty Eve Ballinger. Betty Eve Ballinger's legacy is an important part of Galveston and Texas history, particularly in how women were involved in preserving history and advocating for education and social reform. Her role in developing the Daughters of the Republic of Texas was crucial for the preservation of historical sites like the Alamo and San Jacinto, as well as promoting the study of Texas history among women. Her activism in health and education following the 1900 hurricane, as well as her later work in women's suffrage, highlights how her work continues to shape Galveston and the world today. Betty Eve Ballinger was born in Galveston on February 3, 1854, to a prominent family that lived at Avenue O and 29th Street. Betty was one of 5 children born into a family of influential lawyers and statesmen. Her father, William Pitt Ballinger, in 1846, was the first to receive a law license after Texas became a state. As a child, a significant influence in her life was the legacy of her maternal grandfather, William Houston Jack, who fought in the Battle of San Jacinto against the Mexican Army in 1836. As a young woman, Betty was educated in traditional women's schools in New Orleans and Baltimore. But when she spent time back at home on the island, she was surrounded by stories of the early days of the Republic of Texas and the heroism of those who fought for its independence from Mexico. In the spring of 1891, Betty and her cousin, Hallie Bryan, were exploring a local cemetery when they noticed the neglected graves of Texas notables, David G. Burnett and Sidney Sherman. David Burnett served as the first interim president of the Republic of Texas, and Sidney Sherman was a commander during the Texas Revolution and is credited with coining the phrase, "Remember the Alamo." A little later after finding these graves, while discussing the matter in Betty's father's law library, the two women had the idea to rally the wives and daughters of the Republican heroes to preserve the memory of these early Texans. A few months later, the pair traveled to Houston to pitch their idea to a small group of like-minded women. The idea was a hit, and the women first organized under the name Daughters of the Lone Star Republic. They developed the group's core values and mission for several years, while gathering support from across the state. On March 19, 1895, their charter was filed with the Department of State under the name Daughters of the Republic of Texas. Ultimately, the organization encouraged women to participate in the future of Texas, primarily through an emphasis on improvement in education for Texas children and the maintenance of historical sites such as the Alamo and the San Jacinto battlefield. They also required their members to present research and discuss their readings of Texas history. Betty Ballinger presented 2 topics in the first year. One was biographical sketch of veteran James Price, and the other, colonial times in Texas. And to bring it all back to that cemetery where she discovered those rundown grave sites, that priority was remedied quickly. A large monument still stands in Lakeview Cemetery to honor the burial site of David Burnett and Sidney Sherman. But Betty Ballinger's work as a social organizer didn't end with the Daughters of the Republic of Texas. In September of 1900, her perspective, as well as the entire community on Galveston Island, shifted dramatically when the Great Hurricane of 1900 destroyed the city. Local women's groups worked hard to rebuild community services on the island. Betty Ballinger quickly became involved with an especially active and successful organization called the Women's Health Protective Association. According to the Texas State Historical Association, members of this organization worked to enact a number of different civic programs and community services, such as enforcing new city building ordinances, instituting the regular inspection of dairies, bakeries, grocery stores, and restaurants, establish medical examinations for school children, and to provide hot lunches to the kids in Galveston schools. The Women's Health Protective Association also took on the challenge of replanting thousands of trees and oleanders after the 1900 storm. As Betty worked to expand access to health and education services across the island, she also developed a new perspective on the role of women in society. In 1912, the Galveston Equal Suffrage Association was formed, with Betty serving as the first vice president. Later that year, at 68 years old, she and several other women spoke before an audience of 150 people to advocate for the right of women to vote. Betty's legacy is also marked by her belief that education was not only about learning the past, but also about empowering future generations. She firmly believed that an informed, educated population could better steer Texas towards progress. Her personal efforts in advocating for educational institutions, like a free kindergarten, helped shape the framework for modern education in Galveston and beyond. Throughout her long life, Betty Ballinger worked to improve the lives of women and children in Galveston and across Texas. She served in various roles as a member of many important institutions in the area, such as the Rosenberg Library and the Johanna Runge Free Kindergarten. Betty died in Galveston at the age of 82 on March 23, 1936, just under a month shy of the 100-year anniversary of the Battle of San Jacinto. Well, if you remember where she was when she had the idea for the Daughters of the Republic of Texas, she was in her father's law library, a standalone building on the grounds of the family home. This building still stands today, and is preserved and is now known as the Cradle. It is cherished by the Daughters of the Republic of Texas, and the Cradle is viewed as the Galveston headquarters to the DRT. Betty never married or had any children herself, but her legacy of educational engagement and activism provides an important foundation for Galvestonians and Texans today. This is Galveston Unscripted. To dive into everything Galveston, check out visitgalveston.com.